Hello everyone, welcome to Dublin, Ireland, the capital of the magic world. This weekend, it's time for Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Rich Hagan here at the news desk alongside Pro Tour historian Mr. Brian David Marshall and the much decorated Hall of Famer Luis Scott Vargas. Gentlemen, welcome to you and welcome to all of you, whether it's morning for you in Europe, whether you're staying up at night all the way across the United States, whether you're already in to your Friday night around the Asia Pacific region. We are very glad to have you with us, and we have such a spectacular 3 days ahead of us. BDM, for you, give us one thing that you can't wait for this weekend.
I really can't wait to see what the team series does to the Pro Tour. Players have been given the opportunity to assemble themselves in 6-player teams. These teams are going to be locked in for the remainder of the Pro Tour season, and the top 2 teams at the end of the year are going to play each other in a special tournament at the World Championship. I can't wait to see how that takes shape.
Luis, it's great that we have you on our team. Thanks for being here throughout this season. But for you, what are you looking for over the next 3 days of competition?
I really am looking forward to how the draft format plays out. That's always the format that has the most variance in between what the different teams expect, and just seeing how they value cards and what they prioritize is really, really fun.
All right, so if you are here for the first time, welcome along. The Pro Tour is a little different than any other competition we do, so let's walk you through the formats and the schedule over these next 3 days. BDM, what are we looking at?
Well, you know, very excited, Luis. You get to watch a draft coming up. We're going to watch players draft. They're going to draft Aether Revolt, Kaladesh, and then they're going to play 3 rounds with the decks that they draft within their pod. They're going to play against the same players, same table. They play best 2 out of 3 Swiss pairings, and then we go to 5 rounds of standard.
Okay, Luis, can you just explain what this Swiss pairings is? Because we're in Ireland, and it's nothing to do with, but it's nothing to do with Switzerland as such.
Well, it's neutral. It's except for by record. Basically, you always play someone with the same record. So the 1-0s play the 1-0s, the 2-0s play the 2-0s, the 2-1s play the 2-1s, and so forth.
Okay, so
and you can't play the same person twice
in the same format. You can play them in the draft and then play them in the standard, then play them in the draft. So you can play the same person 3 times if you kind of run into each other, but for the most part, you're not doubling up.
Okay, BDM, that takes care of Friday. What do we need to come back on Saturday?
So 4-4 record gets you to come back on Saturday, and then we just basically run through that same process again. We draft 3 rounds of draft, 5 rounds of standard, and then that's going to set up our top 8.
Luis, historically, you've played in a bunch of down-the-stretch matches where you've won your win and in to the top 8, and that's maybe been as early as well, in your case, probably as early as round 13 on one memorable occasion.
Right.
But things are really shifting down the stretch now, because those last rounds, even if you're in the top 8, there's a lot more to play for.
Yeah, because of the new top 8 structure, you're getting first and second seed is worth so much more than it used to be, that we see fewer intentional draws and more matches getting played out, because you don't want to end up in the 5th through 8 bracket, and you really want to end up in the 1-2. So it is very critical how you finish.
So the reason for that, BDM, is you actually get extra match wins, essentially, on Sunday by record.
If you're the first or second seed, you basically bide into the semifinals. You only need to win 2 rounds to win the tournament. If you're in the 5th through 8th seeds, you know, you're playing in the first round of the quarterfinals, and you have to fight your way all the way up the bracket.
Right, so it's anywhere from 2 for the first and second seed, 3 matches for the 3rd and 4 matches on Sunday for the 5th through 8th seed. That's how it works. So that's our format and schedule. Round about 400 players today. That'll get cut to 200 and a few tomorrow, cut to 8 on Sunday. But we are going to start with draft, and this is a new, complex, kind of bewildering format, BDM. So we want to mark everyone's card before we get down to the floor with this first draft to find out what we're looking for. What's your sense of what the pros are saying in broad terms about this new format?
You know what? They're saying, so what do you think of this draft format? What do you do in this draft format? There seem to be a lot of questions, even up to the eve of the Pro Tour, from a lot of top players. You know, Martin Hughes is someone who is, you know, well known for his mastery of limited formats, and he was, you know, talking online about, you know, having done 30 drafts without having won one, and he was just like, what am I supposed to be doing?
Now, to be fair, 30 drafts that he's playing are almost certainly against 3 Hall of Famers, 2 Pro Tour champions, and his 2 other teammates. But a lot of these pods, Luis, are going to be like that, aren't they?
They are, and I would expect to see more aggressive decks than maybe we have in previous formats. It seems like the format is pretty tempo-oriented, which everyone always says initially, but I really do think it's true. The way the format's structured, it really rewards attacking, it rewards being proactive. Improvise certainly plays into that as well. So I would expect to see more people on the proactive plan than the reactive plan.
Let me ask you a question about Improvise. If you open up a pack and there's like a card like Barricade Breaker, maybe an Improvise payoff, and a couple of implements. Which way would you? Where do you lean? Do you go like enablers first or payoff first in this draft format?
I would tend to take the payoff first. Your Barricade Breaker, Sweatworks Brawler, Bastion Mentor, all the cards that have the Improvise ability, and then try to fill out the deck with enablers because there's more of them. But it really depends on the composition of your deck at that point.
The implements, you've already said one of my magic words for the week, and I think they're super important. We've just come off a Grand Prix weekend in Prague, where at the start of the weekend, most people are like, these are terrible, they're one, they don't do anything, the effects are tiny, who cares whether you're cycling through, Improvise not that great. By the end of the weekend, people were sitting there flicking between Implement and Mythic Rare, pick one, because they were pretty certain they weren't going to see the Implement again. What role do the implements play in this new format, Luis?
They're mainly Improvise enablers because they let you cast your 4, 5, and 6 mana cards on like turn 3 or play 2 cards on turn 5. And that just lets you get ahead on board, which, again, in this format, being proactive is very important.
Sometimes they let you play your Revolt cards off curve.
It's true. Revolt is another theme of the format. I would expect to see a lot more Improvise-focused decks than Revolt-focused decks.
So let's talk about Revolt. People talk about the opportunity cost is a phrase that you often use on a podcast of world renown. What is the cost of getting Revolt online? Because certainly, again, watching at Prague at the GP, a lot of time Revolt was quite hard to trigger if you didn't have implements.
So both with Improvise and Revolt, you have to kind of weigh how many enablers, how many cards that make these mechanics work do I play versus payoffs. The biggest difference is that Revolt enablers are a little more specific than Improvise. Improvise just asks for any artifact. And the Revolt payoffs just aren't quite as clear-cut good as the Improvise payoffs. So as a result, as you said, the opportunity cost on Revolt's just like a little bit higher, payoffs a little bit lower. We're going to see more incidental Revolt, like the good Revolt cards are good, and fewer like this is a Revolt deck. I don't expect to see a lot of that.
Is Revolt why you would think that this might be a more tempo-y format because like nobody ever blocks?
That has something to do with it. I think that Revolt just doesn't match up well with what a lot of the format is doing, even though there certainly are some very powerful Revolt cards, like Vengeful Rebel, for example, is just a fantastic card. You're going to take that card early. It's going to go in your deck. But you might see a deck with 5 Improvised cards and 10 artifacts. You're not going to see very many decks with 7 Revolt cards and 10 enablers. It's just not how it plays out.
You talk about a deck with maybe 10 artifacts. There are also a lot of decks, which wasn't true in Kaladesh, with literally no artifacts. So how have the teams gone about solving the thing where, like in Kaladesh, you'd go, yeah, I'm going to play 1 Fragmentize and ideally 1 Appetite for the Unnatural or some similar effect. Are all those cards now in the sideboard? Because if that's true, that ups the value of the artifacts you are playing because people aren't going to have the removal for them.
It depends on what you end up drafting. I would say in general, they're more likely to start in the sideboard in the main deck than they were before. A powerful card like Release the Gremlins, for example, you're going to main deck it because the payoff's so high, but something like you mentioned, Fragmentize, I'm going to tend to leave that in my sideboard at a higher percentage than I used to.
Ask you, BDM, from your perspective of drafting so far, is this a normal format of you play good cards on curve, you remove their big expensive monster, ideally at a mana advantage to you, and that's the way most games play out? Or is this an unusual format?
What I found about this format is that I win if I have Winding Constrictor, and I don't win as much when I don't have Winding Constrictor. That's what I found out. But to your point, the Winding Constrictor decks tend to be very like just curvy, kind of classic creature decks with green-black. I'm going to curve out and then I'm going to play removal on the top end and clear the path.
One of the traditional sort of advice for people at home who are just starting out in Magic is if you can't decide between the 2-drop and the 5-drop, you take the 2-drop. You go cheap. Is that still true, Luis, here?
It is. You want to get on the board quickly.
Okay. So, final question before we turn our attention away from draft and onto the teams that are here, because boy, are there some hot ones. Luis, in general, Are there archetypes, and you and I are going to go through all the color pairs after round 1, but before we draft, are there decks that break the rules of Magic? Is this a limited format where if you're sitting between two people who aren't quite at the races, you can just hoover up all the green, all the white, and suddenly you're untouchable? It doesn't matter how many Pro Tour champions you're against, the deck just breaks the game.
The best example of that, I think, is the Improvise deck. If you end up with a deck that has a lot of Improvise enablers and payoffs, you get to do some pretty unfair seeming things. You get to play, your Sweatworks Brawler on turn 3, your Bastion Inventor on turn 4, after having an Aether Chaser on turn 2, and you just all of a sudden have 10 power on turn 4.
So, a lot of exciting draft action coming up. The players behind us, you can see, they're all swooping out behind me. They are just about to sit down and draft. And I can tell you, we've got a terrific draft pod coming your way. Looks to me like we are going to have Matt Nass of the United States. He's on Team Channel Fireball Fire. Jack Dobbin of USA. Harold Chow, USA. He's on Team NorCal. Then Ben Stark, Channel Fireball Ice. We'll be watching him draft in a bit. Ricardo Bragato from the Australian Tapas team. Marcio Carvalho, Portugal, from Dex Army. Then Fiuma Matsumoto of Japan. And Hararuya's team member Shuhei Nakamura. That's our feature pod this morning, coming your way in just a bit. But guys, the team series is, maybe it really is about to revolutionize Magic. BDM, you're the historian. Has there been a more noticeable shift in perception within the pro community than has happened in the last 3 months?
Yeah, you know what? I had a chance to talk to a lot of different players this week about the team series, and they're like, yeah, this really feels different. I know it's going, people talk about their own individual experience of going to the tournament, where now suddenly, maybe those last 3 rounds that, they're like, oh, you know what, I'm tired, I didn't do well, I'm not in a great spot, I don't want to play anymore. When they're like, I can't do that. I have my teammates that I have to pull along. I have to get as many points as possible. It just seems like a very different energy coming into this event, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see which of these teams pulls out ahead.
Luis, you certainly have some insight into how teams shook out. What was the process like of trying to find groups of 6 to work and test and have each other's backs together?
It was not simple, I can tell you that much. You have to balance a lot of things when constructing a team. First of all, skills. You want people who are going to get a lot of points, because at the end of the day, the amount of pro points you get is what counts. So you're incentivized to have the 6 most skillful players on your team. But you have to balance that with people who are good to play test with, your friends. I mean, you want this to be fun. You want this to be an enjoyable activity. And then, the teams are sponsored. So you see things like Puzzle Quest, for example, sponsoring 2 of the different teams. And so figuring out a sponsor that works for every member of the team is important. Also, because it's 6-member teams, you end up often having like 2 of the teams preparing together, because like a 12 is closer to what a normal team roster would be. So balancing which teams are testing together as well is important. So everyone figured it out. There's a lot of awesome teams here, but it was not a short process.
Also introduced a new wrinkle into, I think, preparation. You touched on it a little bit with sponsorship. The logistics of getting the teams together, but getting the sponsorship, managing the process of getting jerseys. We talked to a lot of teams this week for video content, and it was kind of this like recurring theme through all the teams, where they had just like struggled with like, oh, how do we make sure our jerseys are here in time? How do we make, it was this new component of Pro Tour preparation that, a lot of these players are like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that, right at the outset, but, I know I have a better process for it going forward.
Yeah, and one of the great things about it is that teams historically have sort of waxed and waned and different members have been on, but here, what you learn from this weekend directly plays into what you do in your process for the second event. And you go, let's not make those mistakes again. And what you learn from event 2, you then go into Hour of Devastation, which is the last one of the 3. And again, it's like, okay, let's iterate again. And it's in your interest to take every every little nugget you can get from this first try at team play. One thing you're going to notice down on the floor is the team jerseys. Every member of every team is in their official team livery. So as you start getting used to them, as we start getting used to them, you'll recognize the blue of Team Channel Fireball Ice. You'll see the outstanding logo of teams like Masashi and Genesis and so on. So there's that kind of color coding going on to help you and us along as we go into this new world of teams. So why don't we look at some of the teams? Here's the thing. There's 32 teams in total, but they're not all created equal. And BDM, you spoke to this yesterday. They all know that they're not created equal. They're very much, different teams have different goals.
Yeah, absolutely. There are only about 70 gold and platinum pros coming into this Pro Tour. You throw in some, couple dozen Hall of Famers who are actively going to Pro Tours, and you're still like probably under 100 players who are guaranteed to be at all 3 Pro Tours this year, which is a big incentive when you're forming your team. That if you have 6 players who are going to be at every Pro Tour, that's going to give you a leg up. But there are teams here that are first-time Pro Tour players. There are teams here of players who are all silver invites. A team like East West Bowl, which had 18, 20 players before, has to break up into teams, and they also have to sort out where their gold and platinums go, where their silvers go. I can tell you it worked out pretty logically. But it's definitely interesting to see the teams that are like, not only do we want to do well for the team series, but we also want to do well so we can keep competing in the team series, stay on the Pro Tour, and do all that kind of stuff.
And in a sense, the shorthand code for that is 11 and 5. If you can put a team member to 11 wins and 5 losses across the 2 days, Friday, Saturday, that will let you come back for the next Pro Tour. So there are some teams, very inexperienced, who are just seeing, look, if we test and work really hard and luck falls our way, maybe we can get 1, 2, or 3 people back again for the next one. They don't have their eyes on the World Championship in Boston later this year. But the top teams, oh yes, they want to add to their Hall of Fame resumes, they want to add to their Pro Tour titles, and they want a seat in the 2-team showdown at the World Championship. So we're going to go through maybe about half the field for you as we work our way through the day today, the top 16 or so. Why don't we start with one of Luis's group of colleagues, Channel Fireball Fire. Let's take a look at them. There they are, Pat Cox, Matt Nass, Martin User, Josh Utter-Layton, Corey Burkhart, and Paul Cheon. Luis, it feels to me like all of these, with the possible exception of Josh, have unfinished business with the world of Pro Magic.
Yeah, Josh, as you just kind of alluded to, very likely a first ballot Hall of Famer, given that he has 5 Pro Tour top 8s. The rest of the team is still looking to pick up a few more. You have, Pat Cox, 3 Pro Tour top 8s. You have Martin with a Pro Tour top 8, but you're looking for, Corey would like to add a Pro Tour top 8 to his resume, as would Paul. Matt Nass has the one from Pro Tour Kaladesh. He's hoping to run it back here, and I would like to watching this team prepare. This is the team that I actually did spend time with, because these are a lot of my close friends, and kind of got to see their preparation coming into the Pro Tour. So I'm excited for that.
Interesting though, Josh has some work to do this season. The long-term view for him is great. Hall of Fame coming up, but short term, he's actually has to worry about qualifying down the road here for this season, doesn't he?
He does. Josh actually is a silver level player, and so he needs the 11-5 finish that Rich was talking about. He would also, if the teams do well enough, then he'd be qualified for the last Pro Tour as well. There's additional incentive in the team series here for him.
Now, if that's the first team you've seen, you probably recognize most of the names. Then you think they're obviously one of the favorites, but in reality, there are so many great teams. We're going to get to them through the day, but I can tell you that down on the floor, you can hear how quiet it is. Everyone's ready for the draft. Let's hand you down for the first pick and first pack of Pro Tour Aether Revolt.
Hello there, and welcome to the booth here at Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Marshall Sutcliffe with Ian Duke from R&D. And Ian, I got to tell you, this draft format, it's got all the testing teams kind of in a rile. There's not a lot of agreement, let's just say that, among the teams.
Yeah, absolutely true. It's a very deep, very rich format. I'm curious to see multiple different takes on it as we go through the weekend.
Yeah, usually by this time, the teams are starting to, consensuses are starting to form, and you start to see patterns. But I have seen a lot of, I can't figure this format out. I can't win in it. But, we'll see. A lot of them keep some stuff hidden up their sleeve. We've got Ben Stark from Team Channel Fireball Ice as our first drafter. We're going to watch him right now. Let's take a look at our featured table draft here. Ian, we've got Ben Stark on the lower right-hand corner. You can see to his left, Ricardo Bragado. There's Marcio Carvalho. We're actually going to get a chance to watch his draft a little bit later at the news desk as well.
That's right. Marcio, the limited master of last year, right? One of the absolute best records on the Pro Tour in limited.
That's right. Fumiya Matsumoto. There's Shuhei Nakamura, another Hall of Famer at the table. Matt Nass, currently 18th in the world. Jack Dobbin, and then Harold Chow round out this featured draft pod here. All right, you ready to watch some drafting?
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready too. Why don't we head down to the feature match area to watch Ben Stark draft Aether Revolt. Hello and welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Aether Revolt. We're in Dublin, Ireland. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Ian Duke, and we're ready for our first draft. This, of course, is one of the most tense moments of the entire Pro Tour. This is where we get to see people open up and get their hands on packs for the first time. We're taking a look here at Ben Stark. He's from Team Channel Fireball Ice. You can see that here. He's, of course, a Hall of Famer. Also considered one of the best limited players in the game, period. So we get to watch a true master at work here. He's also, for his team, he leads the limited testing. He's kind of the point man for that. So we get to see what that team came up with, or at least get an idea of it. Ben has a great drafting strategy, in my opinion, where he tries, generally to stay open, read the table. He's not going to try to force an archetype unless he really feels like it's necessary. There's a Scrapper Champion pulled to the front here, Ian, as we see him go through. There was a Daring Demolition as well as an Aether Chaser. Aether Chaser, considered one of the best commons in the set, period, by a lot of the teams.
Yeah, that actually surprised me a little bit. It looks a little unassuming. 1 in a red for a 2/1 first strike with the ability to spend some energy to get a servo.
That's right.
But absolutely at a premium. Great 2-drop as well.
He's also got a Vengeful Rebel pulled to the front of his list. This is one of the best Revolt payoff cards in the set. You have to really balance out your Revolt enablers with your payoffs and try to make those things come together. But the Vengeful Rebel is absolutely a card that rewards you for setting up Revolt. It kills the creature basically every time if you can get Revolt and cast it. Black has strong removal in this set as well.
Yeah, Daring Demolition, one of the strong black removal spells that Ben will certainly be looking for if he chooses to stay on that path.
Interesting pack here. He's got a Merchant's Dockhand. There's also an Aether Poisoner just to stay kind of simple. It's not a super powerful card, but it's a good card. The card that kind of jumps out of the pack is Monstrous Onslaught, which he's pulled to the front here. That card is a wrecking ball.
It sure is. And Marshall, before the show started today, we were talking a little bit about the strength of the green uncommons in this set. Monstrous Onslaught being absolutely one of those that you'll pick early and you'll just kind of, lock in on green in some cases. That said, Ben Stark's a very flexible drafter, so I'm sure he's going to wait and see what comes before totally committing to green.
Yeah, I think that pick is definitely one where he said, well, this is the best card in the pack. I'm going to take it and see where this leads me. He's got a Defiant Salvager pulled to the front, but I also saw a Prey Upon. Yeah, he's got that pulled up to the front now, as well as a Pima Aether Seer. That card hasn't impressed me as much as the other ones that he's got, the Prey Upon. And specifically, the Prey Upon is the card that I think I like the most here. But he is looking at that Defiant Salvager, potentially thinking, well, I'm in black, and I've got a Revolt card, and this is a good Revolt enabler. Maybe that's what I want.
Yeah, I like the Prey Upon here a lot. Solid removal spell goes really well with the same theme as Monstrous Onslaught, which is just having huge creatures in your deck. And the fact that he got the Monstrous Onslaught second is a much bigger draw to green than getting it first, right? Because the person you write passed it to you.
Look at this. He's got a Scrounging Bandar here for his next pick. There was even a Prey Upon still in the pack. So green looking open, and green is a very powerful color in this format for sure. You mentioned the uncommons. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about those uncommons, especially the most appealing ones, which is Ridgescale Tusker and Malphus Revolutionary, along with the Monstrous Onslaught we saw, they're all double green. They're all like, hey, you want to be green? Let's be green. You're not splashing this thing. You're not getting it for free. You're gonna be green to make these happen. But the Scrounging Bandar, a premium 2-drop in the format, and Ben wasted no time picking it up. Now, he's not going to see any green cards in this pack. So this is where we're going to get to see what Ben wants to do. And to be honest, there's really no good black cards either. Renegade's Getaway is not a good card, so he's going to have to pick another color here. He took a blue card. I actually couldn't quite see what it was. Reverse Engineer.
Okay, quite a nice pickup here. Just even at full retail price here, spending 5 mana sorcery speed to draw 3 cards is, fairly solid. And then obviously a lot of synergy there with Improvise getting a discount on that. So a pretty decent pickup here at this point in the draft for Ben.
Yeah, there's a Hinterland Drake for him. There's a Highspire Infusion in green, but that's not a card that's really going to pull Ben in. This is going to be really interesting because at least what we've seen is that green felt very open for the first 3 to 4 picks, and now it feels like it might be drying up on him. That's 2 packs in a row with nary a green card to look at.
Yeah, we could be looking at a situation where about 3 and maybe also 4 seats to Ben's right, there are other people dabbling in green. So he got some strong green early on, but now he's starting to get cut off here.
And once again, the trend continues. He's got a Silkweaver Elite in the pack, but that's a medium level common, for Ben here. It looks like he did take it up trying to cling to green, especially given that there weren't really any other great options in that pack for him anyway. But he's not going to be happy about that. The Silkweaver Elite's not a great card, and he was hoping to pick up something a bit better, I think, at this stage. Wow, green has been just completely cut off, Ian. He has seen a Highspire Infusion and the Silkweaver Elite. Those are the 2 green cards he's seen in the last 4 packs.
Also noteworthy, no blue cards in the pack either, which was looking like it was kind of maybe going to be a second color at this point.
So he just kind of takes a mulligan here and says, I'll take a Reservoir Walker because it's colorless, and if it makes the cut, you're not happy. And of course, now he sees an Aetherstream Leopard, which he's going to take here most likely. There's also a Leave in the Dust, I should mention. But, that's the type of card he was hoping to pick up in those middle packs. It's not an early pick, but it's a good card.
Yeah, Aetherstream Leopard, a card I'm always happy to have in my green decks, and seeing it this late after seeing sort of a drought of green along the way, it's things are looking a little bit more up here for Ben than they were the past couple picks.
Yeah, one thing that's going to happen here is out of the second pack, Ben can basically bank on seeing good green cards coming his direction. He took every green card he could, and he didn't even see that many of them. So the people on Ben's left are going to have a really difficult time still being in green if they were. What he's really interested in is that third pack when it comes back over. We'll keep an eye on that as it comes up, because it could have just been that there wasn't that many green cards in the packs. That happens sometimes.
Yeah, it could also be, as I was saying before, a situation where, maybe his 2 neighbors to his right aren't in green, and then the third person to his right is in green, which would set him up to get 3 premium open green picks at the beginning of pack 3. So could be great for him.
All right, we're going to get a chance to watch Ben look through his pile here. The way it works in a time draft here at the Pro Tour is that you're not allowed to look at the cards. You place them in a single face-down pile in front of you while you draft, and then in between packs, you're given a specific amount of time to review your picks. And this is so that Ben can do things like say, well, which colors do I have the most of? How many 2-drops do I have?
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at your
mana
mana curve is one of the most important things you can do at this stage of the draft. So you have a good picture of whether you're looking for more 2-drops to kind of get on the board early, or if you just need more power in your deck, more finishers for later on.
This is kind of a mess. Ben is kind of in 3 different colors. He's got blue, black, and green. He doesn't have one color that he's just rock solid in, though I would say he's favoring green the most if he can. But when you look at it, he's got Monstrous Onslaught, Prey Upon, and a Scrounging Bandar, and then an Aetherstream Leopard in there.
Also really noteworthy, he doesn't have that many strong artifacts. Usually when you're playing around in a couple different colors, you feel much more comfortable when you have a core of artifacts that'll go in your deck regardless. But in this case, if he switches fully into blue and green and drops off the black, he's actually losing a lot of his picks from pack 1.
Yeah, you can see by the expression on his face too. I don't think Ben's happy with how things have gone so far, though. To be fair to him, what you do is you draft your seat. You do not get to choose how good your deck is going to be or how good the packs are. You draft the best you can for your seed, and I think he's done a good job of that.
I think so too. And I think we're going to see Ben really anchor himself in green as much as possible. It's a really deep color in both Aether Revolt and Kaladesh, and that'll give him the option to kind of feel around a little bit more and decide if he's going to go into black or go into blue.
All right, let's get into that next pack and see what direction he goes. Ooh, he got a Ridgescale Tusker and a Free Jam Regent as well. Wow, that would be his first red card, so he wants to stick in green. One thing that Ben's thinking about, by the way, if you didn't catch that, he already picked it.
Oh yeah, wasted no time at all.
You will not see that Ridgescale Tusker in his pile anymore. It's one of the best uncommons in the set, full stop. It's better than a lot of the rares. You know the nickname for that card out for the pro players?
I've heard people calling it a mythic uncommon.
Yeah, it's a mini Verdurous Gearhulk.
Oh, wow.
You know? And it's actually bigger than a Verdurous Gearhulk, at least.
Yeah, this card does not fool around. It is absolute bananas.
Yeah, I think most people think that it's between Untethered Express and Ridgescale Tusker. I think Ridgescale Tusker is a more powerful uncommon.
I think so. I think if you're in
colorless,
if you're in green, right, then
exactly.
this is the stronger card.
Yeah, but he wasted no time picking that up. And again, Ben is really banking on picking up a bunch of good green cards out of this pack. Ooh, a Winding Constrictor. That could be good for him.
So this, of course, the black and green multicolor uncommon here that works really well with +1/+1 counters and not so bad with energy either.
And on top of all that, you get a 2/3 for 2 mana, assuming you can cast it early in the game. That's just rock solid too. He took it. He had a Cruel Finality he could take. Again, Ben still wavering a little bit on whether he wants to be blue or black with this. The Winding Constrictor really starts to push him in a direction of being green-black, which, by the way, that's my favorite 2-color combo early in the format.
Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with rock solid, huge green creatures and then black removal spells backing them up. It's just a classic recipe for almost any limited format.
It is, yeah. You know, you're not maximizing on synergies, but I'm going to tell you what, this black-green deck does have synergies built in. It looks like another Aether Stream Leopard. There's also an Iron Tread Crusher, which is a card that I think a lot of the teams have been looking at a little more closely than they did at first. I'm curious. I would assume it's going to be the Leopard here for Ben, but we'll see what he does. But I was going to say this black-green deck, it has that baseline. He took the Leopard that you just mentioned, big creatures, good removal spells. It also has this +1/+1 counter sub-theme that is ignited by that snake. The Winding Constrictor absolutely sets the deck off to be insane with that. Remember, he's already got a Scrounging Bandar. Mm-hmm. Maybe he'll pick up another one here. And it doesn't take much to make that really go off. Renegade Rallier... could think about splashing for it. The problem is there's really nothing else in this pack. He could take an Unbridled Growth, which is a relatively low impact card in his deck. He's currently not splashing, but it also just, you can pay green mana and draw a card.
Yeah, and importantly, it's a good trigger, a good way of triggering Revolt, right?
Yeah, for that Vengeful Rebel that he's got.
Absolutely.
Maybe the Silk Weaver Elite too. He did take it. I love watching Ben draft, by the way.
Truly a master.
Yeah, and it's just, ooh, there's a Lifecrafter Cavalry. Oh, there's also a Perilous Predicament. Man, you guys printed that card and really threw us a curveball. Oh, he's got a Renegade map in there too. He's pulled to the front. This is a good pack. I'm curious to see what he takes here. He's going to go for the map.
Okay.
Perilous Predicament, it was hard to evaluate, man. I'm still trying to figure that one out. You guys really threw us a curveball with that.
Yeah, this set has a lot of nuance to it for sure. I remember drafting internally the first couple times and just being like, wow, there's so much going on here. Like, yes. I just need to draft again and figure it out.
Yes. Yeah, that was my response too. There's another Lifecrafter Cavalry back there, an Aether Herder, and he could even take a cheap artifact with an Implement of Malice. Consulate Dreadnoughts at the front too. Dismissed early in the format. It's got some more eyeballs on it than it did have before. I'm curious to see where Ben comes down on this pick. This is a really, because he's got some kind of normal playables, and yeah, he's just going to go for the Implement of Malice.
Yeah, I really like Implement of Malice. It's one of my favorite of the implements there. Just always pretty solid value. I mean, you know, it's a 2-for-1. It's great at triggering Revolt. Has some nice synergy in his deck.
He's got a Prey Upon as an option, another Perilous Predicament, but there's also just an Aether Poisoner, and he's going to go for that. I like Aether Poisoner.
I do too.
It's actually really good against Ben.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I've heard people refer to this as a removal spell,
yeah.
And in many ways it is. Just getting an early Death Touch creature on the board can really help catch you up against aggressive starts.
Secret Salvage, that is not going to be a card that he wants to play. As far as limited playability goes, that might be the worst card in the set. So he double-checked which one it was, but ultimately it looks like he's taken an Aether Herder here, so... Well, he got his green. You know, it was flowing fine. It's still, you know, he's still looking at green cards in every pack for the most part. There's an Ironclad Revolutionary. He took the Highspire Infusion, though, just taking the green cards. Really curious to see about this last pack as we work our way towards Kaladesh here, Ian, because I would expect him to not get a lot of green after the first couple of picks.
Yeah, that's the way it was looking after pack 1 for sure.
There's a Cruel Finality in the pack still. Nice pickup.
Yeah, that's not bad this late. I mean, not like a super premium card, but just a nice, solid removal spell you're always happy to have in your deck.
Definitely glad to pick it up at this juncture.
Yes, totally agree. So if I were Ben, I'd be feeling pretty good at this point. He's found his colors. He's got a really nice mana curve. He's actually pretty low down to the ground on his curve. He's got plenty of 2-drops, couple nice removal spells. I think he's really well set up to be just a little bit greedy in the third pack here with Kaladesh. If he sees a big bomb, he's got some room near the top of his curve to add on a little bit more power to his deck. So I think he'll really be looking for, something powerful. I mean, you're always looking for like a Gear Hulk or something like that, but seeing like a big, powerful rare, I think would really hit the spot for his deck right now.
Could see that Ben was not super high on those perilous predicaments. I don't think he ended up with any of them, and I believe he saw 3. It is a very tricky card to set up. I've seen it be a complete blowout, destroying, killing a vehicle and a real creature in combat. That's pretty disgusting, but I've also seen it do a lot less than that.
That's right. As you said, a very hard card to evaluate, and part of that is because it's high variance from situation to situation and from game to game. In some games it's going to be fantastic, in other games it's going to be kind of awkward.
I like where Ben's at here, though. I think that pack really helped him solidify his 2 colors, and he improved his deck significantly by getting the Whining Constrictor right after the Ridgescale Tusker. That's pretty much the dream. Those 2 cards are very close friends.
And we've seen Ben be very disciplined here, always sticking to sort of the nuts and bolts, the implements, the enablers, rather than, reaching big for these huge payoffs without having his bases covered in terms of 2-drops, in terms of removal spells. And that's why I said, he's maybe set up here to be a little bit greedy in pack 3 because he's done such a good job sticking to his baseline here in the first 2 packs.
Looking a little shaky out of pack 1. He had to weather a storm that was pretty ridiculous, really sent him down the path of being in green and then just took that path away from him all of a sudden. But he stuck with it. He knew that in the second pack he was likely to get a bunch of green cards. That happened. He even filled out with some decent black cards out of the pack too. And this is the really interesting pack. This is the one where he knows that he's not a huge favorite to pick up a lot of green cards, so he's going to really need to scrap for these early picks and hopefully get some great black cards too. All right. Reminder here, this is Kaladesh. So for those of you at home that are familiar with old Kaladesh, this is going to look like the norm for you here. And not a great pack for Ben here. I saw he had a Prophetic Prism in the pack. Gosh, is that the best card in the pack for him? He's looking at his Sage of Shayla's Claim. This is not what you were hoping for here.
Wow, yeah, this is a swing and a miss here for Ben Stark.
Oh, no. Does he really have to take a Sage here just for his curve? He doesn't have a lot going on with energy right now. And Sage is a borderline playable anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if this were like pick 1 of Kaladesh, I would definitely value the Prophetic Prism over the Sage of Shayla's Claim, but he doesn't really have anything he wants to splash here, so...
He's just going to take the card that has the highest upside, that's Make Obsolete. I'm curious to see if Ben's in the camp of main decking that or not. One thing that's definitely happened since Aether Revolt, Ian, is that 1-toughness creatures are much more prevalent than they were. There's a lot of 1-toughness creatures, and Make Obsolete, I think, significantly got better, so I wouldn't be shocked to see him main deck it. All right, now there's a splashable card. He's got an Unlicensed Disintegration in the middle. Oh! And a Bristling Hydra hiding in the middle of the pack, too. As you can see, Ben not fooling around. Once he saw that Bristling Hydra, it went on top of his pile. And who needs to splash when you just got a really solid 4-drop here?
Absolutely. That's a great pickup for him. And this is really the scenario that we were talking about even back in pack 1, where we think that maybe 1 or 2 players to Ben's right are not in green. And sure enough, he does get past this bomb green rare here.
Yeah, and this was the window to do it. Because we would not anticipate that the next picks will have cards like that left in it. But let's see. You never know. Ooh, he did get some nice ones here. There's a Thriving Rhino and an Armorcraft Judge. Both of those in the pack would be quite nice in his deck, but he knows that with that snake, cards like Thriving Rhino spike in value, and he needs to make sure that he gets cards that get the +1/+1 counters more than he needs to get the payoffs like Armorcraft Judge. Yeah, Thriving Rhino still very good. The Thriving Cycle versus the Aether Cycle. I think +1/+1 counters have proven to be immediate and better in the game than 1/1 servos for most decks. Ooh, nice. He got a Marionette Master in there.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
I was going to say, this is about the spot in pack 1 where we saw green starting to dry up. So this totally makes sense here that now he's seeing a strong black card to add to his deck rather than green. So
he's also taking a look at Fabrication Module, which is a really powerful artifact, but it really rewards consistent sources of energy. And Ben has a couple dispersed through his deck, but not consistently.
yeah, for Ben's deck, I really like the Marionette Master a lot better. I mean, that's just what he needs, is to be able to slam something down on turn 6 that immediately impacts the board.
Oh, yeah. That card's so good. What's Ben going to pick up here? A Riparian Tiger, perhaps? No, he took a black card. He kind of took it out of the middle. That wasn't the Lawless Broker I saw in the pack, was it? No, that's still in the pack. Oh, he got a Gonti Lord of Luxury in there. Jeez. Two rares back-to-back in black here for Ben Stark, and things are coming together nicely. He really weathered that first pack, and now he's just going off. Now he can take a Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot. There was also a Foundry Screecher. There's a Live Fast. The green has dried up.
Yeah, we're seeing a very similar pattern to pack 1, which makes sense. The packs are being passed in the same direction here.
He did not take the Puzzle Knot. He took a Sage. That's a curve pick for him.
Not something to be super excited about. This is kind of just filling out your curve.
That's right. He just wants to make sure that he's doing things in the early game. He doesn't get ran over. There's a Decoction Module. Unfortunately, Decoction Module not nearly as potent as the Fabrication Module. A fine card. It does some work. Works really well with Fabrication Module, but the Fabrication Module actually does a lot on its own. It affects combat in a meaningful way. It gives you immediate counters every time you get an energy. This card's a little slower. It's a little bit more on the grindy end of the spectrum. And, Ben doesn't have a lot of places to spend that energy anyway. Looks like he's just filling out the curve with a Lawless Broker here. Plus, that is a +1/+1 counter synergy. He does have a little of that going on with the Whining Constrictor. And Ben's got another Sage of Shayla's Claim here. He's kind of stacking those up now. This came out nicely.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think at this point, Ben's not likely to see anything else huge to add to his deck, but
right.
I think he's basically done with his deck here, Marshall.
I do too. I think he's got plenty of playables. The one thing that I do think he wishes he had a little bit more of is removal. No tidy conclusion. He ended up passing the Daring Demolition earlier in the pack, and he doesn't have a lot of ways to just take care of it. If his opponent plays a dragon per se,
Sure.
A Free Jam Regent as an example. There's one of those in his draft, and he doesn't have a great way to deal with that. Now, the good news is his game plan is very proactive. He's going to be curving out. He's going to be putting counters on his creatures. If he happens to draw his snake, he's going to be going completely nuts, and he's going to really force his opponent to react to him. But you know how limited goes. Sometimes you mulligan or you miss a land drop, and sometimes your opponent has a really powerful card, and it's really nice to have that safety net of being able to reach out and take that card out. And Ben's a little light on that part of the spectrum.
Yeah, I totally agree with that assessment. I think his deck is, I would call it just a straight A level deck, with the one weakness being he's just like probably one removal spell shy of where I would really love to be if I were him.
Great to watch Ben draft as well. Really fundamental draft strategy from Ben. He stuck to his guns. You saw him make some disciplined picks. He opened a Free Jam region in the second pack, and that was when he was kind of dabbling in 3 different colors at the time, and maybe he just thinks, I'm just going to take this and try to see if red's up,
Yeah, it would have been really interesting if the Ridgescale Tusker wasn't also in that pack, because, I'm not even sure which of those cards is better, honestly. Plus, it's easy to go with the green one when you're already in green.
Yeah, but we saw Ben stick to it, and he recognized that in pack 2, things would turn up for him a bit. It did, and he even got fortunate in pack 3 to get a couple of rares, as well as some other playables in the early picks for green. Again, this is just one of those scenarios where that pack was brutal. Pack 1 was tough for Ben. He had to really navigate that and understand that he needed to stick to his guns, and he did.
Yeah, and you said it was fortunate for him that he picked up those strong green and black rares in that third pack, but I'm not sure it was that much, fortune so much as Ben just really reading the table well and seeing, yep, I can tell that the 2 or 3 people to my right probably aren't in green, and then I can see the blacks coming around a little bit late and just, selecting those colors correctly and getting paid off in the third pack.
That's right. Welcome back to the booth here in Dublin. That's Ian Duke. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. It's our pleasure to bring you coverage of the Pro Tour here. This, of course, is the booster draft portion of our event, and we're going to be having 3 rounds coming up. We even get to watch another draft in just a little bit at the news desk, and then we'll be playing standard for the rest of the day. When we come back tomorrow morning, do it all again. Another booster draft and more standard as I work our way up to our top 8. It's going to be a great weekend. Of course, Sunday is going to be the big top 8. That's the big show, the spotlights on our players and the big pressure. But for now, it's more excitement. It's more anticipation. It's that energy that you feel when you sit down at the Pro Tour with some of the best players in the entire world in one room, and you open up a booster pack and you look at 14 cards and you make that first choice, and off goes your Pro Tour.
Yeah, you can really feel the energy in the room. There's nothing quite like the morning before the first day of a Pro Tour. Players are a little bit nervous, but they're also really excited, so it's just great to kind of feel that.
Yeah, and we're going to be bringing you that all the time. Now, I can tell you that we do get to see more at the news desk, but first, we'll be back after these messages.
You're going to see coming up, we've got Grand Prix Pittsburgh, Vancouver and Utrecht. Then it's the Magic Online Championship. Then it's Grand Prix Barcelona and then Grand Prix New Jersey. So that's coming up over the next few weeks. But over the next 3 days, hello everyone, welcome back to the News Desk. I'm your host, Rich Hagan. Marshall promised you more magic momentarily, and that is exactly what we have. Because from that stacked draft pod this morning, Marcio Carvalho, the finalist from the World Championship, missed out just by one win against Brian Brown, doing, of course, at PAX last year for that World Championship title. But Marcio Carvalho, one of the great limited masterminds of the modern age, been around forever and very, very good at 40 cards. Let's find out how he did at that same draft table as Ben Stark in the company of our own Brian David Marshall and Louis Scott Vargas.